A player or someone you watch even more specifically because there's things in his game maybe you would want to add to yours in the league?
Man, I think Luka. I mean, Luka's amazing and he's incredible. I think the way he can not only score the ball, but also the way he passes. And I think the thing about him is, like, he's not the fastest, he's not the most athletic, but he can get his defender to move where he wants him to go, and he takes up that space, and he does a really good job of either keeping the defender behind him or keeping him to the side. So I think that's something I can certainly learn from. Like, I always kind of want to run away from the defense rather than absorbing the contact and taking up.
Watch her eyes light up when she talks about Luka Dončić. The way he controls pace, manipulates defenders, creates space without elite athleticism. Caitlin Clark just spent 30 seconds breaking down exactly the kind of player she models her game after. But here's what makes this moment fascinating. Her head coach Stephanie White went viral 18 months ago for celebrating when Luka sat down during a Mavericks broadcast. Celebrating when he left the court. Let that sink in for a second. This isn't just Caitlin praising a player she admires. This is a calculated message delivered on NBC's Sunday Night Basketball, one of the biggest platforms in sports media. And if you know the history between what Stephanie White said about Dallas and how the Indiana Fever actually used Caitlin this past season, this interview becomes a lot more interesting.
Luka Dončić, Stephanie White, how do you feel about Luka Dončić? Let's take a look.
A wrist sprain in that game and has been out since. And that puts a lot on the plate of players like Spencer Dinwiddie, who just came in, who finds Marshall for the corner three.
You see the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor. He's a guy who's high usage rate, the ball's in his hands. When he's not on the floor, that ball is moving, it's popping. Multiple players getting involved in action, and everyone's stepping up.
Lower usage rate.
When Luka's not on the floor, the ball's moving, it's popping. You can just see Stephanie White, how excited she is. Oh, she's moving, it's popping. Oh, well, what if I have Luka, and when Luka's on the floor, we just make.
There it is. Stephanie White on a Mavericks broadcast, giddy about how Dallas moves the ball when Luka's on the bench. Everyone's involved in the action. Everyone's stepping up. She's practically glowing talking about ball movement and player involvement when the best player sits down. Now here's the uncomfortable parallel. The Indiana Fever this past season ran Caitlin Clark as a decoy on crucial possessions, set her up as a screener instead of the primary option, parked her in the corner for three-point attempts while other players handled the ball. After she dropped a historic performance against the New York Liberty in the playoffs, the very next game they dialed back her usage like they were managing her confidence instead of riding the hottest hand in basketball. Sound familiar? It should, because what Stephanie White celebrated about the Mavericks, without Luka, is exactly how she coached the Fever with their best player on the court.
The biggest moments the WNBA has ever seen. Looking forward into the future, what would you like to see happen as you come to a negotiation?
Well, honestly, I don't think it's just a big moment for the WNBA. I think all of women's sports, I think this is one of the biggest moments we've ever had. So, I feel very confident that we're going to get something done, and that's because we're in this moment because of the product we put on the floor. So we need to be able to continue to do that, and I know everybody's working really hard. There's a meeting tomorrow that's super important, and I truly do believe we're going to get something done here in the next couple of weeks.
Caitlin Clark pays attention. She might not respond to every Twitter controversy or address every critique publicly, but she's watching, she's processing. And when she gets a national platform during Lakers Knicks on NBC, she chooses to spend her analysis time breaking down Luka Dončić, not just his scoring, his manipulation of space, his ability to control defenders despite lacking elite speed, his mastery of using his body to create advantages. These are the exact skills Caitlin wants to develop, the exact style of play she's modeling, and it's the exact opposite of how Stephanie White utilized her during critical playoff moments. This isn't coincidence. This is a professional athlete sending a message through the media about how she expects to be used going forward.
Or am I preaching? Amen. Let's take a look on what Caitlin Clark had to say about CBA negotiations.
The biggest moments the WNBA has ever seen. Looking forward into the future, what would you like to see happen as you come to a negotiation?
Well, honestly, I don't think it's just a big moment for the WNBA. I think all of women's sports, I think this is one of the biggest moments we've ever had. So, I feel very confident that we're going to get something done, and that's because we're in this moment because of the product we put on the floor. So we need to be able to continue to do that, and I know everybody's working really hard. There's a meeting tomorrow that's super important, and I truly do believe we're going to get something done here in the next couple of weeks. But like you said, there's a lot of boxes that we still need to check. We've added two new teams. There's going to be more players in ever, and then we have to get into free agency, then have a normal draft as well. So there's a lot of things left to do, but I really do feel confident that both sides are going to reach a deal here soon.
Yeah, draft slated for April 13th, but the growth of the league has been so much. I mean, can you just help us to understand the transition this league is going on right now?
I mean, it's incredible, and I remember my first WNBA game when I was a young girl. I went to the Minnesota Lynx when they had their dynasty with Maya Moore, and they were playing the Seattle Storm, and now basically any arena you go to, it's sold out. We're adding 2 teams. We're up to 14 now, and then hopefully getting to 18 in the next couple years. So, you know, business is booming, and that's a really good thing, and we kind of just got to keep meeting the moment. The talent's getting better and better. You see it at the college level coming into the professional game, too. So I feel very fortunate, and hopefully have a long career ahead of me as well.
Listen to how Caitlin frames the CBA negotiations. Confident but measured. Professional without being corporate. She acknowledges the complexity, mentions the expansion teams, references the compressed timeline with free agency, and the draft move to April. But here's what stands out. She sounds like someone who understands the business side of basketball. Compare that tone to how other WNBA stars have approached these negotiations publicly. Nneka Ogwumike called the league's initial offers disrespectful before details were even public. Natasha Cloud went on social media rants about ownership not valuing players. Breanna Stewart made it sound like the league was deliberately sabotaging negotiations. They turned it into a public battle, framing every discussion as players versus greedy owners. Caitlin takes the opposite approach. I feel very confident that we're going to get something done. No attacks on ownership. No inflammatory language. No positioning herself as a victim of the system. Just a straightforward assessment that both sides will reach a deal because the product on the floor justifies it. That difference in approach matters. Because when Caitlin Clark speaks, casual fans actually listen. When she says business is booming, people believe her. When other players complain about disrespect while the league is breaking attendance records and signing major media deals, it creates cognitive dissonance. Caitlin's credibility in these moments is why she's becoming the face of the league, whether certain players like it or not.
Real quick, you got Melo there, you got Reggie Miller there. How many WNBA games do you think that they've watched that Caitlin Clark wasn't playing in? Let's be real. How many WNBA games do you think that they watched that Caitlin Clark wasn't playing in? But on a serious note, you take what Caitlin Clark says and you compare it to things that Natasha Cloud says, you compare it to things that Nafisa Collier says, you compare it to things Nneka Ogwumike says, you compare it to things Breanna Stewart says. Clearly, you can take one side a little bit more serious than the other.
Here's the question nobody's asking out loud, but everyone's thinking, how many WNBA games did Reggie Miller and Carmelo Anthony actually watch this season that didn't involve Caitlin Clark? Be honest, how many Aces Storm games did they tune into? How many Liberty Sun matchups did they study? The answer is probably close to 0. And that's not a criticism of them, it's just reality. The mainstream basketball world started paying attention to the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark. The ratings prove it. Indiana Fever games averaged over 1 million viewers multiple times this season. Games without Caitlin struggled to crack 400,000. That's not an opinion. That's Nielsen data. But here's where it gets complicated for the league. Other WNBA stars want the recognition and the money that comes with mainstream attention. But they resent the player who actually delivered that attention. They want Reggie and Melo analyzing their games. But those analysts only started watching because of the rookie they spent all season targeting with physical play and dismissive comments. Caitlin handles this dynamic brilliantly. She doesn't point out the disparity. She doesn't say you're only here because of me. She just shows up, gives thoughtful analysis, and lets the contrast speak for itself.
Luka's amazing. The way he can not only score the ball, but also the way he passes, he can get his defender to move where he wants them to go, and he takes up that space. Obviously, he's pretty incredible. Now, why this is more important than just her coming out and talking gleefully about Luka Dončić is that we all remember what Stephanie White said about how the Dallas Mavericks play when Luka is off the court. How happy and giddy she got calling the Mavericks game when Luka was off the court. And how what she said during that game is very reminiscent of how the Indiana Fever played with and without Caitlin Clark this past season. Let's hear what Caitlin Clark had to say, and then we're going to compare this to what Stephanie White had to say about a year.
Let's get back to the Luka comparison, because this is where the coaching implications become impossible to ignore. Caitlin specifically mentions how Luka can get his defender to move where he wants them to go and takes up that space. She talks about absorbing contact instead of running away from defense. Using body positioning to create advantages despite not being the fastest or most athletic player on the court. This is advanced basketball IQ. This is a player who understands that elite point guards control the game through manipulation and positioning, not just speed and shooting. And this is exactly what the Dallas Mavericks scheme for Luka every single possession. They clear space, they set screens that give him angles, they design plays that maximize his ability to operate in the mid-range and control tempo. Now think about how Indiana used Caitlin in their playoff series against Connecticut. How many possessions did they design specifically to get her the ball in space with room to operate? How many plays were drawn up to let her control tempo and manipulate defenders? Compare that to how many times she was used as a screener, or spotted up in the corner, or asked to facilitate for someone else instead of attacking herself. The contrast is stark, and Caitlin just spent national television time explaining exactly what kind of player she's studying and what kind of game she wants to develop. That's not subtle. That's a blueprint for how she expects to be coached going forward.
This past season, it's not far-fetched. Shoot, I wasn't happy. I know many of you weren't happy. Decoy Caitlin, pick setter Caitlin, corner three Caitlin. Hey, Caitlin, you just went crazy against the New York Liberty. Calm down now, Caitlin. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section below. Am I reaching?
The decoy plays. The reduced usage after dominant performances. The emphasis on team basketball that somehow meant their best player touching the ball less. Fever fans watched this all season and couldn't understand the logic. You don't manage Caitlin Clark's minutes and usage like she's a veteran on a maintenance plan. She's 22 years old, in peak physical condition, and playing the best basketball in the league. But Stephanie White made deliberate choices. After Caitlin's 40-point playoff performance against New York, the coaching staff actively reduced her shot attempts the next game. They ran more sets through other players. They emphasized ball movement over individual creation. And the result? They lost the series. This isn't hindsight criticism. Fans were screaming about this in real time. The game threads were filled with confusion about why their best player was standing in the corner watching other people create offense. The post-game analysis focused on questionable rotation decisions and conservative play calling. And now, months later, Caitlin goes on national television to break down how JJ Redick schemes for Luka Dončić, how Dallas maximizes their best players' strengths, how elite teams build their offense around elite talent. The subtext is definite. Here's what makes this situation particularly fascinating going into next season. Stephanie White is locked in as the Fever's head coach. Caitlin Clark is locked in as their franchise player. Neither one is going anywhere. So this isn't about speculation over coaching changes or trade demands. This is about two strong-willed basketball minds who need to find alignment on how to maximize this team's championship window. And that window is real. The Fever made the playoffs in Caitlin's rookie season. They've got young talent developing around her. The organization is investing in infrastructure and resources. They're moving into a new practice facility. The financial commitment is there. But none of that matters if the on-court philosophy doesn't match the talent. Think about the greatest point guards in basketball history and how they were utilized. Magic Johnson ran the Lakers' offense with complete freedom. John Stockton controlled every possession in Utah's system. Steve Nash orchestrated Phoenix's 7 seconds or less attack. Steph Curry became the focal point of Golden State's dynasty. The common thread? Their coaches built entire systems around maximizing what made those players special. That's what Caitlin is advocating for when she analyzes Luka. Not more shots for the sake of stat. Not individual glory over team success. She's talking about systematic optimization. She's talking about coaching philosophy that enhances rather than restricts. She's talking about the difference between managing a player and unleashing one. Stephanie White has to be watching this interview. She has to understand the message being sent. And the question becomes, does she adapt her philosophy or does she double down on the approach that got them bounced in the first round? Because here's the thing about elite competitors like Caitlin Clark. They don't complain publicly. They don't demand trades or create locker room drama. But they do send messages. They do make their expectations clear through calculated moments like this NBC appearance. And they do remember how they were used when things mattered most. The Luka comparison isn't random. It's not just Caitlin praising a player she enjoys watching. It's a 22-year-old franchise player telling her coach, her organization, and the entire basketball world exactly what kind of system she believes she can thrive in. It's a statement about offensive philosophy delivered through player analysis. It's advocacy disguised as commentary. And it's brilliant. Watch how the Fever's offensive system evolves next season. Watch whether Caitlin gets more freedom to operate in the mid-range, to control tempo, to manipulate defenders the way Luka does. Watch whether Stephanie White adjusts her approach or sticks with the ball movement philosophy she celebrated on that Mavericks broadcast. Because this interview just raised the stakes on that decision. Caitlin Clark went on NBC and gave her coach a masterclass in what elite point guard play looks like. She broke down the nuances of how Dallas maximizes Luka's strength. She explained exactly what she's trying to add to her own game. She did everything except explicitly say, "This is how I want to be coached." But she didn't need to say it explicitly. The message came through loud and clear. So here's the real question. Was this moment awkward for Stephanie? Is she watching this interview and feeling defensive about her coaching decisions? Or is she watching it and recognizing an opportunity to evolve her system around the best player she's ever coached? The answer to that question will determine whether the Indiana Fever become championship contenders or remain a team that made noise in year one but couldn't figure out how to maximize their generational talent. Because Caitlin Clark just told everyone exactly what she needs to reach the next level. The blueprint is there. The example is Dallas. The player is Luka. The question is whether her coach is willing to study that blueprint and implement it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Stephanie White gets the message? Do you think the Fever's offensive system changes next season? And be honest, was Caitlin being subtle here, or was this as direct as it gets without explicitly calling out her coach? Because from where I'm sitting, this was one of the most calculated interviews I've seen from a professional athlete. No drama, no controversy, just a clear statement about expectations delivered through player analysis. That's how you handle business when you're the face of a league. That's how you advocate for yourself, without creating headlines. And that's why Caitlin Clark continues to separate herself from other WNBA stars. Not just in talent but in how she navigates the media landscape and manages her professional relationship. Hit that subscribe button if you want more WNBA analysis that goes beyond the surface level. And let me know in the comments what you think happens when Fever training camp opens next season. Because this story is far from over.